Thank you all for joining us. We're here having our annual Dharma meetings. So we're in upstate New York, and welcome to all of you from around the world, wherever you are. And special welcome to Sebastian and Kurt for joining us. I know you're very busy, so thank you for taking a moment away from the AI computers that you focus on. And so Kurt is the executive director of the Dharmamitra project and a longtime Dharma practitioner and professor emeritus at UC Berkeley's Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. And thank you again for hosting the recent conference on AI and the future of Buddhist studies, and waking us all from our dogmatic slumber, I suppose. It really helped me to realize, how important all of this is going to be. We're all going to confront this reality soon. It's coming. So thank you very much for including us in that event. So today, Kurt and Sebastian will be speaking to us about the Dharmamitra project, telling us a bit about how it can be helpful for translators now and what it may be able to do for us in the future. Sadhguru Foundation will be partnering with them in the near future. We'll be working together to develop better tools for the future of Buddhist studies, Buddhist study and practice. But before we begin, I just wanted to say a few words. There's a lot to think about and a lot going on right now. I know there's really a lot of change going on right now, and it can be pretty disturbing. However, today we're not here to talk about politics. But instead changes in technology. There are already a lot of changes going on in our world in terms of technology. And I can see that there's two strong camps already forming. One that denies the relevance of using the most advanced digital tools, translators who may worry about being obsolete, and another who eagerly awaits some kind of technological utopia where producing publishable translations becomes easy. I believe both extremes miss the mark. And as might be expected, I suggest a cautious middle way is the best approach. No one at Sadhguru is blindly supporting AI in the hopes that it will overcome the problem of translation. With the development of computers and then the internet, our world has changed, and we're on the cusp of a new development that may change our world in as yet unknown ways. The reality is that it is already happening, and it's further along than many think. So we were just notified this morning that at the large Dhamra transmissions going on in Kathmandu right now, some translators are providing live translation essentially of the text via Gemini, I believe, one of the AI tools, merely because something is better than nothing, but it's probably not that good. And so the tools are already out there being used today as we speak, in a sense, in a traditional setting. So something for us to think about. Students, artists, writers, translators, and professionals all over the world are already moving ahead with using these tools. And the reality is that, similar to digital dictionaries or the advent of the word processor, some of our workflows may change. But it is likely that it will be a lot less exciting or earth-shattering than any of us are predicting. Useful tools will be developed and taken on by younger translators who will be able to spend more time, I hope, on cultural nuance, context, and creativity. They'll still have to do the hard work to produce publishable translations. The truth is that translators have never been computers, have never been simple converters of words, and have always been complex cultural mediators. I don't see any sky falling or any messiah coming either. I see some tools that might be of limited benefit, and it behooves us to take a look at them and learn how we might use them intelligently. So rather than choosing between fear or blind optimism, let's choose preparedness. It is simply prudent to learn what we can and prepare to work with these emerging AI tools in the same way that it was prudent to learn to use a computer and get on the internet. And perhaps we can even see if we can influence the development of these tools for the betterment of our world. The middle way forward, then, is one where we don't hide or refuse to acknowledge what is already happening with or without us, but one where we cautiously approach this new reality and see how we can best use it to the advantage of the Dharma. So, with those few words of what I hope is encouragement, I would ask that all of us listen with an open mind to the next presentations and see what we can learn. All right. So, Kurt, would you like to start?
Sure. Okay, thank you, Marcus. So today I'm just going to give a quick overview of our Dharmamitra project. And I thought it's worth mentioning the mission, and the mission is just to try and bring these rapidly evolving state-of-the-art AI technologies to the advancement of the study and practice of Dharma. And the emphasis here is on the advancement of the study and practice of Dharma. That's the goal, and these are simply tools to hopefully to help achieve that. The languages that we're focused on are canonical languages of Buddhism, Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan, and classical Chinese. And the AI technologies we're using are today will be exclusively talking about machine translation for these canonical languages enabled by the current large language model-based technologies. But we're also working on search capability, which is like if those of you are familiar with Perplexity, we're envisioning a Perplexity-like search over Buddhist materials in canonical languages, as well as English translations in secondary literature. And Dharma Nexus, which would be an expansion of, for those of you who are already familiar with Buddha Nexus, expanding those capabilities to a broader range of literature. But again, I'll just be talking about machine translation today. So the goals of today's talk are really very modest. It's to encourage you to try our Metra machine translation for Tibetan and Sanskrit at dharmamitra.org. And in some sense, I had trepidation early this morning, like going, well, we're going to spend 30 minutes giving you a pep talk about something that would take you about 30 seconds to try. So I'm not sure that's the best use of time, but that's kind of what we're signed up to today. Success in any endeavor is a function of expectations. So we'll be trying to give you some tips on how to be most successful, as well as, kind of in line with Marcus's comments, give you some expectations for you regarding what Metra can offer in the broader translation context. And we're very happy to get feedback on your experiences so far, as well as to talk more broadly about the role of technologies in Dharma practice. The Kensey Vision Project, Zach Beer invited me to give a talk a couple months ago. That's still online. I will share my slides, or you can just do a screen snap of this link, and you can listen to me talk even longer about all this if you want. Okay, so I thought it's important to share something about, because it comes into question all the time, just what are you guys trying to do anyway? So to me, the essence is, when is a translation successful? And for me, it's successful when somehow, through whatever means, you can feel the voice of the author is alive and speaking in the translation and really meeting the hearts of the student. And in that regard, we're, as translators, and I guess I should say as early as possible, I'm very much an amateur translator. I'm honestly sure every single person listening is a better translator than I am. So, but I just keep at it, and it's been one of the great joys of my life. And I see I'm kind of an intermediary between these bodhisattvas who've written these great works, and authentic students who really would like to know that material but are limited by their language. And in that role, it's it's a very intense role between those two energies. And this is a very human experience, both in the process as well as in the reading translation. But I do believe I'm speaking to you today because I do believe that machine translation can help in this process. So I'm just going to start out with Metra basics, and we've got a firm deadline of 30 minutes, which I should have started my timer already. Sorry. Sometimes people are alarmed, like Zach Beer sent me this anxious note. Kurt, I see you have 175 slides. your talk is only no. We have a ton of backup slides should we need them. Don't be alarmed. Okay, so to talk through what Metra is, it's a large language model that has been fine-tuned. It's we've taken a variety and when I say we here throughout, this is the professorial we, commandeering the work of all grad students, Sebastian, and anyone else who's engaged in the project. So take a off-the-shelf language model like Google's Gemma 10b, which is probably what the people doing Dharma Nexus are using just this model alone. And then we're fine-tuning that further using 2 million different Tibetan English sentence pairs, and then producing a translation tool that you may also see at MOLAM AI, as well as at Dharmamitra.org. And how did these 2 million sentence pairs come to be? Well, basically, they're the results of original texts almost exclusively from BDRC, translations from a variety of different sources, including Dhamra, of course. And we have, I think, friendly terms with everyone who's listed here. Some days more friendly than others, but generally friendly terms. And then it was really an army at MOLAM AI, which using Sebastian's tool for a vector aligner, took these original texts, took these translations, and did the alignment to produce these sentence pairs, which essentially trains this Gemma model better how to translate Tibetan. So the process is pretty simple, and about the only ability you need is to get to a web URL, which I think probably everyone could do. Ability to work with Unicode, either in Tibetan or in Wiley or IST, is presumed, and I would have thought that that's a norm, but I've actually talked to some old-timer translators for whom that's a frontier in itself. But we won't get in further into that today. So you basically just choose your input format, or it will auto-detect. You choose your output language, of which the default is English, and people are surprised when they see Japanese and German and so forth, but because we use Gemma's underlying language capabilities, we get support for a variety of other languages for free, even though we haven't trained in those languages. And then you press this button and you get a translation. And so, as a simple example, I have just a little Tibetan sentence right here with the translation below, and it's really just that simple. So I thought probably one of the most useful things I could do is, rather than talking very abstractly, is just to talk about my own experience as a user. And I'll again say that I just do a lot of amateur translation without either any external constraints. I'm pretty frivolous about my translation, but once a month, for my dear Sakya Lama Kunga here in Kensington, California, I prepare an English translation of a Jainang ritual that we use during his ritual. This Sunday, it'll be Yolo Jambala. And I'm just going to do an executive summary here. In the interest of time, I'm happy to go into more detail, and I have some backup slides. And this used to take me 10 or 12 hours, which frankly, in a busy week would often be kind of frantically done, literally, hours before the ritual was supposed to happen. And since using Metra, that's been reduced to just 3 or 4 hours. So that's been a very welcome translation assistant for me. Another use of Metra is for years now, Professor Jacob Dalton and Kempo Yeshe. I think most of you probably know at least one of these individuals, and I have been getting together once a week to read a very difficult Dzogchen text by Paltronamka Jigme. This is one of Dujum Lingpa's sons. And it's a really ponderous text. It's based on only one manuscript, the edition that we have. And we get a kind of working draft translation of about one side. That's about half a folio. In other words, it takes us about an hour and a half. And in that, at the other extreme, Metra is at best just like a graduate student in a seminar, occasionally offering useful insights. Every so often, it'll go, oh, that's an interesting take on this passage. But it certainly isn't, I wouldn't call it a big productivity booster or a great light shining on this text. And then kind of in between, what you see here, the stack of black on black, are all the different uncompleted or in progress translations that I've accumulated over the last 45 years. And one that I go back to when lamas teach from these, then I brush them up a bit, and then and when they're done, they get back on the shelf. But I've been working on this one commentary on the generation completion stages of Marukachurma for many years. And Mitra, I have a full draft of that translation already done, but when I go back, I use Mitra again, and it's actually it would have been I think a fine translation assistant providing a good draft on that literature. So just to point out the obvious, everything I've described here is either of tantric or Dzogchen literature. I think, and this is my personal experience, I think people working with, say, Madhyamaka or so forth, or other Drupal literature or something might have a very different experience. And I've described very briefly my experience with these. I've got extra slides on all these if there's interest. I would say something about, best practices use of Mitra comes from this project known as the Kangyur Karchuk project. This is something that's under the direction of Tsering Gilek, Chartung Tulku's daughter, and under the direction of her father. And Tanner McAllister is kind of the working Western translator there. And basically what this project is they say Karchak, but it's really a summaries of all the sutras in the Tibetan Kangyur. And in 2023, the process that Tanner put together was to do kind of a research, sutra by sutra, do a little research on it, to do his own translation, to ask the Khenpos who were trying to learn to translate or improve their Tibetan to English translation, to translate, and then to discuss with them various translation issues. And so in 2023 in the summer, then when he went there, they were able to translate a couple summaries from Tibetan to English. And then they introduced Dharmamitra, or the Mitra translation, into theirs, and pretty much the same as before, but rather than Tanner doing the initial translation, Dharmamitra would do it. And they were able to do, I don't know, I think it's something like 16 or 17 sutras. And I asked, Tanner gave a few kind of footnotes on this, saying, well, they had to debug certain processes and so forth, but beyond that, he felt that this was a significantly accelerated the process. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that the sutra literature was quite amenable to Mitra translation. So I've kind of compiled a very ad hoc manual on using Mitra based on my own experience. Again, you can web snap the link there, or you can get the slides later. But just to kind of briefly distill that, still as of today, you need to choose a modestly sized and naturally grouped chunk. A group of sentences, probably 4 or 5 sentences, seems to be about right. If you have too little, you don't have enough context. If you have too much, you can see the quality degrades. I really would like to be able to do an significant size piece, or perhaps an entire text at a time, but that's just, you won't get any kind of good results. You might actually get anomalous behavior there. Some of the first things you'll notice is that phrases or sentences that are there in the original will be dropped. Sometimes you'll see what you might call confabulation or hallucination, where additional phrases are added that are actually not there in the original. And then probably one of the most annoying or frightening things, or encouraging things, depending on your perspective, is you might suddenly get an oscillatory hallucination, like suddenly it'll break into "may all beings be happy, may all beings be happy, may all beings be happy," for just continuing for like hundreds of lines. Yeah. So one of the most, in this Jainang literature that I work with, I was just watching myself very carefully every edit I make, from a Mitra translation just over this last weekend. And what I found over and over is just, when the subject is oblique, then over and over, Mitra will often mistake, so for example, the Buddhist forms will fill instead of "your bodies" are filled and so forth by the initiation water, something when the subject isn't exactly clear. Well, and I should I guess what I'm trying to get at here is when I talk to people about different experiences, we have a tremendous range from people say this is a life changer to this is a big waste of time. And I really, it's been very hard to get very specific examples from people, but I oftentimes feel that people are actually looking at exactly the same results. They just have different responses to them. So I can see how like this referent issue can drive you crazy, or it's really a no-brainer. The context to a human translator is almost always clear. So it doesn't take a bit of time to change it. But if you really were looking for just a solid translation, push button translation, then I can see it's quite annoying. I haven't heard too many people talk up using Google's Gemini or Gemma as a machine translation. I'm guessing that if they're using it for this Dharma Nexus, they're using it because Google's packaged all together in like Notebook LM, the OCR, the machine translation and so forth. So, but what I do hear good things about is Claude, and this Claude 3.5 Sonnet large language model for Anthropic really does surprisingly well at Tibetan, given the fact that this was obviously not a priority for that startup. If you get excited about it and you start using it, you'll get hit up for a pro account for $20 a month pretty quickly, which, I mean, that's neither here nor there, but just FYI. I think the advantage of it is you can, if you have a text file, the Tibetan .text file, the Tibetan Unicode, then you can upload, 5 pages, maybe even a little bit more, and it will automatically translate that. That's a bit more than the capacity I've had success with Metra. And then in the small interactive translations, it will actually give a bit of explanation, which we hear from Tibetans. They really like this because they're learning English as well. So getting two different slants on the same material is actually very, very helpful for them. On the other hand, if you really look sentence by sentence, or we've actually compiled some more quantitative statistics, Mitra's translation to Tibetan literature, I would say, is almost always more nuanced and accurate, although Claude is a convenient way of doing a batch translation to get the gist of some literature. So if you want to read a history or something or like that, I found it very useful to just put a document in there, and you can get a short namtar or something translated in a way that you get some sense of what's going on. Okay, so that was what in nerd speak we would call kind of bottom up. So those are my personal experiences and experiences of a few others. What I'd like to talk about now is machine translation in the broader context of translation. So, Marcus, you may remember, I think it was March 2021 when we first got together and talked about what computers could do for the translation process. And in preparation for that meeting, I thought I would just go and get a handy standard view of the overall soup to nuts translation process. And I looked through book after book after book that Luis Gomez had recommended to me, and I couldn't, in the past, I couldn't find a single one. So I just cobbled this together and kind of socialized it. And I think it has the major steps. It's there's all the issues of preparing the edition from whatever manuscripts and variants you might have, getting some notion of your translation approach. And then there's the actual, inner loop, and again, in nerd speak of creating the draft translation. And then there's all those footnotes, key terms, translation choices. Where did the quote come from? Who's this individual? What's that place? Parallel passages in other literature. Where might they have taken the same idea and so forth. So then there's refining the translation, iterating over and over, professionally editing, and finally typesetting, proofing, and publishing it. And my point is, again, to set expectations, and very much I think you teed things up well, Marcus, for us, is that any one of these steps, 1, 3, 4, or 5, can completely dominate the process. I mean, some translators will say, I spend 2/3 of my time and spend literally years just refining and refining and refining the translation until I'm happy with it. It's clear from some translators' work that the footnotes themselves are entirely expository, book worthy, and must have taken tremendous efforts. Preparing the edition, if you if you have 4 or 5 manuscript variants and so forth, creating a critical edition has been traditionally in academics a research project in itself. So, in terms of seeing what can we reasonably expect machine translation to really do for us, really it helps the most when step 3 dominates. So when might that be? Well, if the text, everybody said, that text, this is the edition, this is just fine. Okay, that's good. If the translation approach has pretty been worked out, we want you for a popular audience, an academic audience, whatever, that's all clear. If the quotes, technical term named entities are either resolved or they're not required for this particular target audience, then that becomes less. And then there's support for refining, editing, typesetting, proofing, and so forth. Then in that case, I think, in terms of the process of producing a translation, the machine translation helps quite a lot. Otherwise, in kind of, management and critical path management viewpoint, it may be, you may be more productive, but it may not be that impactful in the total process. And one of my dearest, oldest Dharma friends, Dan Martin, experimented with Dharmamitra and basically, raised the question, which I'll just paraphrase here, which is productivity what we really want anyway? Which led me to kind of musing about that question, and I posted is a translator of Buddhist literature more like an artist creating a very, a work of art in which the whole notion of productivity seems almost irrelevant, or are they more like an apothecary who's striving to very quickly and efficiently and accurately create a medicine according to a prescription? So we don't have time just this moment to debate that, but that is I think a question very much worth discussing. So with that, I'll pass it on to Sebastian. And do you want me to de-share, Sebastian, and you take it from
I think that would be
here?
better. Yeah, it would make
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, back to Sebastian.
Yes. I just had to send out a share request. Okay, great. I think it should be okay now. So you see my screen, yeah?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will talk about the Metra Sanskrit capabilities now. So these are, as Kurt has already talked about, machine translation, and I will just introduce a bit on how we do that for Sanskrit. Then we do have grammatical explanation for Sanskrit on Dharmamitra. Then we also have a new feature, which is combined explanation and translation, which is not yet available to the public, but hopefully within the next 1 or 2 weeks. There are some minor technical details to be sorted out, but it's close to publication. And then we have the Metra search and the Dharma Nexus system. Kurt already briefly mentioned both. And lastly, the Google Chrome extension, which I was quite happy to see that Sadra actually shared my announcement on Facebook. Thank you a lot for that. And I think it's a small but useful addition to the different sets of tools that Metra is offering. Yeah, so that's the different topics that I would like to talk about. Coming first of all to the machine translation. So Kurt already mentioned the 2 million sentence pairs that Manlam AI collected and the great work that we have that they have done together with some help from our side on creating this data set for Tibetan. For Sanskrit, we have really been bootstrapping this entirely on our own in Berkeley. We had basically just David Alport and me as real staff members, and then an army of volunteers and interns and high school students who helped us along the way. And we got to 1 million sentence pairs. And I think the return of investment all in all for that part of project has been very good. I think with the limited resources we had, I think we managed to get quite far. And the results really speak for themselves. So what you see here, I promise this is the only graph I will show. I will not be too technical this time, but this is just showing the performance of our Sanskrit to English translation model evaluated against Claude, against ChatGPT and so on a variety of different literature. So we have the Bhagavad Gita, Vimalakirti Nidesha, Manusmriti, even the Rig Veda, Tattva Samgraha, and more philosophical texts like the Yoga Vasishtha. So this is really, we took samples from each of the whole breadth of Sanskrit literature. And consistently, Metra comes out with a better performance. So the blue bar here shows how good Metra does in comparison to the other LLMs. So I think this is very very insightful to give an impression of the performance. And I think it's also interesting to see that all the other LLMs actually perform very similar on Sanskrit. So they all have the same ups and downs and are actually quite close. So there's no big difference between GPT-4 and Claude at the moment. So yeah, that's a bit like the landscape. And I would guess that for Tibetan, we are also getting to that stage slowly, where both GPT-4 as well as Gemini are probably catching up to Claude, and we get a similarly close distribution across their capabilities as we have for Sanskrit. Yeah, the grammatical explanation system. So this is something, if you use our website to translate Sanskrit into English, you will get a small button that says grammar. And if you click on that button, then this window will open where you see the segmented Sanskrit string into individual words. So this does sandhi splitting as well as compound segmentation. And then each of the individual words becomes clickable, and it will show you the lemma form. So that's the lexical form. In the case of the verb pravartate, this gives you the root pravrit. Then you will also get a morphosyntactic analysis, in this case, information on tense, mood, person, and the number. And then we also fetch entries from the dictionary. In this case, this is mainly based on Monier-Williams, but we're also looking into integrating Apte and the Petersburger dictionary in the future as well. So that's the grammatical analysis system. Then coming to the translate and explain system that we are currently developing. Just a quick demo on this. So you can enter a sentence, then you can click on translate. You will get the machine translation just as it is done right now. But this will then be followed by this analysis, which gives a description of the function of each of the individual words. On the one hand, the grammatical function, but then also how it syntactically works inside the sentence. What is the meaning? And also semantically, the meaning and the relationship to the other words. So this is kind of an integration of the grammatical explanation and the translation system into one system. Yeah, so that's the explanation system. Then the Metra search. I mean, obviously, this might not look like much, but you can search based on a Sanskrit string and get Sanskrit results. And again, while this is something for Tibetan, I think people have been using BDSC and other websites for many years, and it's kind of natural that you can search in a database based on Tibetan input, because on Tibetan we have certain challenges that we have for Sanskrit are not the case for Tibetan or for Chinese or for English. And most obviously, of course, there's Sandhi, and then there's the morphology of Sanskrit, which just makes it extremely difficult to even create a simple searchable database. And that is why up to now we do have websites like Gretel, for example, or the Digital Sanskrit Buddhist Canon, which offer Sanskrit text, but they don't offer any kind of search capabilities because it's just very difficult to do right. And this is one thing that Metra Search is going to address. So we will use the word segmentation system that Oliver and I have developed, and we have published this recently at the EMNLP, in order to break down everything into individual words. Then we do lemmatization as well in order to remove the morphological complexity. And then based on that, we can actually do a search where you can go for individual terms like Dharma, like Buddha, and then you will find also Buddhanam and so on, all the different forms of that, regardless on how the Sandhi might affect the way these are presented in the text. And then Metra Search will also provide semantically more distant passage retrieval, where we use English as a pivoting language. So you can go with queries like, what are the Four Noble Truths? And you will get results from Sanskrit literature directly in Sanskrit. So that's the set of functionality that we are currently working on for the Metra Search in order to make research and interaction with Sanskrit literature easier. Then coming to the Dharma Nexus. So I guess most of you are familiar with Buddha Nexus. At least Greg told me that he's frequently telling people about the use of Buddha Nexus for translators. And I'm very happy to hear that at Sarah this seems to be part of the toolkit that translators are learning at some point. And yeah, so we have been working at Hamburg on a updated and refined version of Buddha Nexus already since 4 years, and due to various reasons it's a little bit slow to finish, but hopefully within this year this update will finally be out. And at the same time, at Dharmamitra, we are going to integrate what we call the Dharma Nexus into our system, which provides similar functionality to Buddha Nexus, but has extended data sets, also improved detection algorithms. So that's, of course, because with Kurt, I'm in a very, very good research environment when it comes to computer science and machine learning. So there is a lot that I could learn in Berkeley in order to improve the algorithms and to make the system more reliable. So that's one part of the update. And we are also going to integrate this Dharma Nexus tightly with the Metra search. So the search engine and Dharma Nexus is going to be coupled very closely. And of course, this is also an opportunity for Tzadra to integrate whatever data is dear to your project into the Dharma Nexus as well, so that we can enable all of these search as well as the detection of similar passages on all the translation, all the literature that is important to the translators at Tzadra. And very lastly, just quickly, the Google Chrome extension. So this is a screenshot on using that on the old Buddha Nexus site. So it works quite simply. You just install it. You can Google for Dharma Nexus, Buddha Nexus, Dharmamitra Chrome extension, and then you will find it in the Google Store. It must be the first result. And it's very simple to use. So once you have installed the extension, you just have to mark a passage, and then you either right-click on it and say translate with Dharmamitra or analyze with Dharmamitra, or you click on that wheel symbol here in the extension bar. And what then happens is you get this window which will provide you with the translation, and then also in the case of Sanskrit with the grammatical breakdown of the individual words and their meaning. And this provides the same functionality as the dharmamitra.org website, but it has a more convenient in-browser experience and is more easily integrated into whatever other database and website you have. So this is a demonstration on Buddha Nexus, but it works equally well on BDRC, on Cebeta, on SAT, on all different kinds of websites. And that's also the aim here, is to have one tool that is easy to use in different contexts. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all from my side. At this point, I'm happy to give it back to Kurt now.
Well, why don't you just continue advancing the slides? We just have a couple more.
Okay.
Sebastian.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So again, I think one of the main goals here is just to kind of orient your thinking about what Metra possibly can do for you. And I would just say it's offering a draft translation for consideration, like another translator and a translation team, certainly not the lead translator, but another member of the team, or another graduate student in a seminar. Sometimes they are off base. Sometimes they're actually have really a good idea there. Others are using it as a completion checker. You run the text that you're translating through machine translation, see if it points out something you missed. Because it's capable of generating translations from Tibetan, Sanskrit, and Chinese, if you have originals exist in all those languages, you can do comparisons and consistency checking for those. And then sometimes it actually really does peg it and get things right. And I think if you look at, there's a position paper, I understand the backdrop here. I mean, a bunch of translators wondering, okay, how should we think about this? 84,000 proactively published their own position paper on AI and machine translation in June of 2023, and I think we're pretty much in alignment there. Sorry, next slide. So just to wrap up, hope you'll at least give it a try and make your own assessment of whether it's useful for you. Most of all, I kind of hope that we'll create something of a virtuous data cycle here. Should keep in mind that we're only in our second year. And before I finish, I'm not sure that I highlighted Sebastian's contribution here as much as I should, speaking about the grad students and things like that. No, Sebastian, this is really amazing what Sebastian has accomplished in just short of 2 years, just a year and a half here really at Berkeley. And going forward, we hope I think our dream with Tzadra would be to create what in nerd speak we call virtuous data cycle, where we help you create more translations, and then the more translations create more training data for us, and then Metra gets better, and this goes on and on. We're always, of course, pleased to get encouraging emails. Or text messages. I got one just this week. It's significant. This is a doctoral student saying significantly improved my workflow. Congratulations and so forth. But we're also very happy to in my OCR years, one time Dan Martin sent me an early morning message showing me some absolutely horrible Tibetan OCR that we had done and saying, Kurt, how do you wake up and live with yourself? So those are also useful for guiding our efforts. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really amazing. Maybe we should. I'm not sure how clear it is to all the other translators joining us, but this is pretty amazing, this work that they've done. So thank you and congratulations, Sebastian, especially for all this hard work. Wonderful. Yeah, excellent. So just because of time, I think we'll move on and we'll hear from Greg, and then we should have questions and discussion.
Okay, you want to have the questions?
Yeah, let's have questions at the end, and we can all share. So Gregory Forg is the Director of Research here at Sadr Foundation. Before he was at Leiden University with Professor Jonathan Silk, and he did his PhD at the University of Vienna, and he has done quite a number of translations actually, some for 84,000 and others. He continues to work with our translators and has been really taking great interest in the AI revolution. So he's got a lot to share with us about practical things. So I'll just let him jump in here and share the screen, and I will move out of here.
Thank you.
So one moment as we switch over.
All right.
Yeah, you can.
Hi,
share the
Kurt.
screen.
Hi, Sebastian. Great to see you. All right, so let me see. I'm going to start my presentation.
So Greg, I know it's going to be hard, but not too long, right?
Not too long. Okay. So I have a lot of stuff too. I'm not going to be able to show much, but yeah, I'm going to take it over from where Kurt and Sebastian actually left us. And I wanted to do something that's complementary. I've been asked to show very basic stuff, you know, that can be useful to translators who are working on text and don't know much yet about, you know, these tools. And so my idea, because I knew that Sebastian and Kurt will be talking a lot about machine translation, and I thought it'd be nice maybe then to, you know, show what these tools can do in this workflow. So Kurt mentioned the workflow quite a bit, and here, you know, is an overview of the workflow of any translation project. It doesn't have to be that linear, of course. People work in different ways. But today, so I would like to show, and that's going to be the main.
You have to share.
I'm sorry.
You haven't shared.
Yeah, I haven't shared my screen. Okay.
Go back to
Sorry.
the screen.
Yeah. Okay, good. Sorry, guys. I have to share my desktop. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Okay, now we can see it.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. So yeah, so we're going to talk more about the workflow, the translation workflow, and how, you know, your translators have to go through a few tasks that can be, some of them, very time consuming. And we look from the perspective of someone who doesn't know anything almost about, you know, Claude AI or other solutions out there, Perplexity, Notebook LM, ChatGPT. So if I have enough time, if Marcus gives me enough time, I'll do as much as I can. But so that's the idea, right? The idea is just to give you an idea, a very practical one, about what it is we can do. So without further ado, we start with the project documentation phase. So we have several phases before the translation process. We have the project documentation, pre-translation analysis of the data, the corpus, the text you selected for your project. And then we have a post-translation phase where you have to prepare all the documents Kurt mentioned, write comments, annotations, prepare footnotes sometimes. And then at the end, very end of the project, there are issues to formatting and indexing, to preparing an index, sometimes finding index entries. So all these tasks can be automated, and we will see how in a minute. The editing too. So we're talking this morning, we had another presentation with Elizabeth Kahn, was talking about how you can get some review on your translation. So that's the post-translation phase. So now there are many steps, and we know that for big translation projects, the road can be quite long sometimes and winding when you're dealing with a big volume of the Dhamra or complex text. So it's a lot of before you even tackle the text, very often there are lots of steps to go through to prepare your project documentation, looking at the primary literature source text, but having an idea too of related text, intertextually sometimes, having the Wiley text in a digital format. So OCRM can be involved. Moonlam AI as a function, I won't have time to show it, but for anyone who's interested on Moonlam AI, you can have an OCR of a page, for example, in 10 seconds. So this is an AI application that's practical. Then you get your text, you have to verify your text. Sometimes you want to align segments. Sometimes we're dealing with several versions of the same text. We're talking with Sean Price this morning about that. So we have sometimes different versions, and we need to get a sense, even if we're not working on a critical edition per se, but we want to get a sense of variant ratings in our text. And then, of course, there's the task of gathering scholarship on the topic. Sometimes we want to know everything there is to know about something, particularly when we go into a new area of scholarship we're not familiar with. So if we ask to translate a text and there's a passage on another register or another genre or something that we're not quite, so we need to know about this. So how do we know this? I'm going to show you now. We're going to switch to my browser, and I'm going to hide this first, mate. So, oops, sorry, I did something wrong. I'll show you a panel. I play and control. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to go with first Google AI and show here. So how we can, I load something I did. Oh, I did erase my. So I'm going to show how you can identify project text. First, get a sense of what's in the text. And, so here I had prepared something, but it's gone. So first, you have your interface. And for all of us who don't know these tools, right? So what you have usually is you have a prompt area. You're going to give instruction in this area. All right. You can upload a text. So here I uploaded the text of the Rumchenba in a digital format. So it has to be a digital format. So Unicode or Wiley. And you have options. I will not talk about that today, but they can be important. You can give system instructions. So usually you can create a project in Claude, in Google AI Studio, and many other applications where you script the role of the tool you're going to use. And so in here, you can basically give an instruction to, give an outline of the text. And this text is in Tibetan. This is useful, this kind of tools, if you don't have time to read, and you have a lot of big textual environment to explore, and they want to know what's going on. So I had prepared this and it's gone. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to run it live.
It's good like that.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes with something very simple first. So it's taking a while with Google AI Studio, but I'm showing you this because there is a function that's really good here, which is, it takes time. So it's free. It's a free resource. You don't have to pay. You don't need a subscription for that one. The good thing is that you can have a very large, amount of tokens. So information, you can have big text that are uploaded in this tool, which is not always the case with all the tools we're using, as we will see. For example, with Claude, which is very popular these days, unfortunately, you're fairly limited in terms of what we call the context window, or the amount of information you can upload to proceed your queries then. And so with this one, you have 2 million, which means you can have, here, this is the entire zip that is uploaded. So it's 2 volumes. It's big. It's actually, a very large amount of data. We're talking about 4 megabytes. And, you can have information through that in one go. You don't have to chunk the text. You don't have to segment the text. And outlining can be really interesting, actually important in in preparing a project, because it will give you an idea to the sections of the text you may want to consult. If there is anything about what you're doing, what the text is about. And so when you have no idea about that, it's saving a lot of time. The outlines are very accurate, usually quite accurate. You can ask for even a subject in Tibetan. You can ask for different styles, so you can expand as well sections. And it's taking usually about 3 minutes. So it's starting now. All right, so you see it, and it's a bit maybe too.
Can you tell us what the prompt is that you wrote?
This prompt was the most basic thing you can do, because we're going to go into more complicated prompts. This one is just like give a detailed outline of the uploaded text. So very basic stuff, right? Natural language. We'll see there are strategies to prompt. It can become more complicated. So, but the way you have here, I wanted to show this just because, it's a very simple tool. It's free. You can have a lot of information there. And so you see it's going through the chapters. So you can then refine. You see my prompt, the first prompt was just give a detailed outline. But I had prepared something a bit, sorry, it's not, it's gone, but you can ask chapter by chapter. They will give you the structure of the text. It can identify all the different chapters. So here you have the, a kind of gradual, right, exposition of the path up to Dzogchen. And so it goes like through the whole content of the text. And then you can further, detail, your queries. You can say, for example, give me more information about chapter 5 or chapter 6. But the format you can have there can be very much according to your needs, And so we can expand. And that's one very cool thing with this Google AI Studio is that this outline can be used to then produce summaries, for example, through another tool. So you can have a sense of the text, you can chunk the text, use it in another tool that's a better summarizer, but you have already a kind of outline of what's there. So it's a very interesting thing to use for large text. I'm showing this because I know that a lot of us work with big text, and sometimes having a small context window, I heard a lot of colleagues saying, this is not useful because I can't upload my PDF or my text or whatever, I'm limited because of the size limits, right, basically. So here, this one is quite nice. I wanted to show you. Sorry.
Using the free account?
It's a free account level. So this is Google AI Studio. The model that is very nice is Gemini 1.5 Pro 002. You have several coming up. And for those who are interested, temperature is how creative the model will be. If you want to summarize or to outline, it's good to have it below 0.5 usually. So anyways, that's a little detail. But you see the format is always going to be the same. It's a prompt window, upload possibility, and then you have the result coming on this. Now, for some of us, we have another issue, which is when we identify project text, we need to work on multiple texts, not just one. Sorry, Wilson.
So what you did was you uploaded the textual.
Yes.
And then what did you actually tell it to do?
So the prompt here is very simple as this one. You see, give a detailed outline of the uploaded text. Most natural language. No coding, no nothing. You just go with a very simple instruction. But as we will see, you can go up in complexity and towards more complexity to have more refined answers too. So you can say, for example, step 1, I will show you that, but read the uploaded file. Text 2, identify the text structure chapter by chapter as found in the text. So you can refine your queries quite a bit then. So now another example, which is maybe more interesting for those of us who work with several texts. So here I'm going to go to this one. Yeah, that's nice when the stuff you prepared is there. So here, Kama Tunso has been working with us on the Bodhisattva Metra project we're working on. Transliterated all the Tibetan Ume, very obscure texts that Tibetan wrote, he's an early Kadampa master, 13th century. And so recently the Kadam, works became available from the Library of Drachman. It spurred, a lot of new research activities to better understand what happened during the pre-classical Tibetan time period, and particularly with regard to practice and philosophy and the second diffusion. And so Karma Punso transliterated huge work, everything you could find written by Tibetan. So we have now this widely, corpus. So I'm working on Tibetan, which I am actually really, because we are preparing various things for our forthcoming, Shantideva wiki, shameless plug. And what we're doing is we have to understand what Tibetan wrote because he wrote some, interesting stuff. But problem is there are many works. So what do we do? So there are tools, corpus linguistic tools, where you can identify a keyword. For me, it was like chuju, so that the word that I'm interested in. I want to know everything Tibetan has written about, chuju in his corpus of text. So I go with the keyword on the corpus linguistic tool, add some, like 300 words before and after the keyword, export the results, and that identifies as well the text from which the string is coming. I've been taken, meaning I know across the corpus, across all the text, all the occurrences of this, of this word in this corpus. What do I do next? I upload my text here. So you'll see that in all these tools, you have usually a project knowledge or a space project where you can upload information, and you're going to query this information you upload there. It's very simple. Push on the button, upload a PDF or a text file, and then you start querying. And here, for example, my first question, many questions, but my first question was here, a long prompt this time, a bit more complicated, but one, I am looking, so step one, I'm looking at what the Kalam figure, Tibetan Suchimunlam, wrote about the Chujuk or Bodhichalatara. I'm doing this because I want the Claude, depending on the training. I don't know if it's been trained in Tibetan Sanskrit, so I prefer to cover my bases. And then two, read the file, uncount results. So my corpus linguistic search with all the strings, text by text, pertaining to my keywords. And so make a list of all text in which it mentions this word. And you see my syntax here is wrong, but it was still so it's good. Then four, for each text, give a detailed overview, about, again, mistake, I was too fast, right? In terms of doctrine, practice, anecdotes, or any other topic connected to Shantideva's work. So I'm detailing, I'm chunking. And when you use these tools, it's one to chunk. So you go like, we were talking with Jeremy earlier, it's a little bit like talking to a child would be between 7 and 10, but with amazing capacities to do things really fast, but not necessarily to understand what it is you want. So you have to really chunk, right? So you go first, this is what I'm doing. So this is who you are. First, you're an expert at this and that. So you design the role. Then what it is you want to do, design the goal, right? And then you say, okay, do this first, read the text. For each text, so I'm saying for each text, which is quite important. So for each text in this piece of information, so give a detailed overview. And so tell me what each text is about. So we go fast below, if you mention anything about Shantideva, sum up the content. If you hit your token limit, use several answers. So this means that there's a limitation in terms of the size of the answer. And sometimes, you will hit that limit because you need a long answer. You have to say, okay, well, use several, answers that I get the full thing. So it will break down its answer in different segments, but you'll have the full thing. If you don't do that, it will stop really, and not necessarily tell you that it's rich, it's in it. So you want to have some kind of information like that. So it's like, okay, I'll help you analyze what Tibetan Suchimunlam writes about the Bodhichalatara this year. And here you see it's giving me a kind of global overview, but that's not what I want. So having this whole thing here, it's quite interesting, a lot of information, but it's not text by text. So I get back to my prompt and I'm like, all right, I want you to use the file names and make a list in descending order of these tags from most relevant to least relevant. There are more than 3 texts in the file. I'm like kind of saying, not good, Mr. Claude. You can do better than that. And so 3, give me any detail of mentions of Manjushri, because there's a dialogue we're interested in. Atisha, in his Bhashya on the Bodhisattva, mentions a dialogue between Manjushri and Akshayamati. And I know there's a text here, but as a control thing, I want to see if Kirtan, you would find the text written by Kirtan, in which his dialogue is mentioned. So it's a kind of text to see how. And so I'm asking for a bunch of things. And look at what's coming now. So let me address each point systematically. Text in descending order of BCR relevance. First, 24. That's my text. That's the commentary on the Bodhisattva by Kirtan that is an explanation of the Bhashyan by Atisha, actually. And it's the same kolo, the tutuk kolo thing where you have this explanation about the sunche kolo, and then the whole practice integrated into the framework of the Bodhisattva, but integrating the entirety of Mahayana, Lamrim, and everything. And so here you have text by text. See, it's telling you, okay, it's a blind test. I didn't put the titles, so the titles are in the text file, not in the file name. Meaning, it's very interesting because it's telling you 022, for example, discusses generation of bodhicitta according to Shantideva. All this was very accurate, and I was very happy because it's like saving a lot of time. It's like you're working with a big corpus of text. You had to go through everything and find all occurrences of the term bodhicitta, and then make sense of what each passage, each text is about. Can you imagine how much time it would have taken me? I mean, Eric would be like, So that was done literally like 30 seconds,
Great. Can you just clarify if the original texts are in Tibetan or English?
So they're in Tibetan.
They're in Tibetan.
It's Tibetan widely text.
So it's understanding and then translating.
So I'm using this.
It read in Wiley.
Stuff.
It read it in Wiley, okay.
Yeah. So you
As
see,
opposed to the Z before, those were English translations,
Yes.
right? Okay.
no.
So those were also Tibetan.
Tibetan widely. Everything is from Tibetan widely here. We're not using translations.
If not, then it seems it gives it in English.
So here it goes text by text, gives me details and everything, and you can start having a whole conversation. For example, you could ask,
but now you're in Claude.
Now I'm clear.
Yes.
I'm showing a different tool. The previous one was Google AI Studio. Now it's another tool. Okay, there would be a lot of things to do, to show still like how you can, for example, this text, the text 24, the Tutuk Kolo has a very interesting lineage there. If you ask for the lineage, it will give you the lineage, the entire lineage without having to read. If you ask for all the lineages related to Bodhisattva in the corpus, consolidate them, but tell me which, for example, master is referred to in which text, it will do that. If the question is formulated like the right way, right? It's a huge time saving way.
I guess there's a tool that transliterates Tibetan script into Wiley.
Yes. So you have tools like this, but you can ask as well. For example, something like Claude can do it quite easily too.
No, but I think what Wolfgang is asking is, do you have to use Wiley, or can you
You can use Unicode.
Unicode?
You can use Tibetan, yeah.
You can use Tibetan.
Unicode means Tibetan script.
Yeah. You can use Tibetan script. For Claude, it's kind of, and I think for Google AI Studio, as far as I can tell too, it didn't mind any format. So now I'm sorry, I could go for an hour. I think I have to rush.
Yeah.
I want to show something as well as the verification and alignment issues. So here, something. It's silly, but it can save so much time. So here another script, another prompt. So here I introduce mistakes in a Wiley and a segment of Wiley, and sometimes also we want to have the Tibetan for a passage translated. So or if we're doing research, writing a thesis, or you have to do it, or a book, monograph, or publishing an article, or preparing a translation. Whatever, sometimes you do have to make sure as a translator that your Tibetan is correct, or that there are no anomalies. And if there are anomalies, then you want them to be flagged. And it's very time consuming. So here I go with this. Step 1, look at this Wiley text. Step 2, give feedback. Step 3, correct any mistake and return the correct version of the text. So I'm putting this very short string here. So you guys can see that, very short. And there are some blatant mistakes. I introduced actually 2 mistakes. So this one, of course, I'm sure Sean, I've seen them already. Yeah, I've seen these spelling mistakes there on the Wiley. So it's there. And then it's telling me things I didn't even think about when I translated the text. It's a short, these are rituals, very idiosyncratic expressions and stuff. So after a while, you don't even really realize you're doing something that's not standard, but it's like flagging things. And now I'm going to go back to my translation. But the interesting thing is, and you see, you have an approximate translation to, which is not the point now, but you can go into a whole discussion about what's going on here. And then here I ask, okay, give me the entire text of the Wiley, make a note every time, write a note. So just, between bracket, put the number, and then write a note below so that I know what's going on, or if you corrected something, or if you suggest something, or, if you see anything. And this is what you get. So Tibetan corrected text here, and then notes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you can save a lot of time. Now, another cool thing, real quick, but that's the beginning of the Achintya Buddha Vishaya text I've been working on, 30 versions in the Conjure. So I wrote a paper on that to develop a whole methodology to select key witnesses. And I had to align to do that, the 37 sample passages. So I had quite a few, about 5 pages in volume of their Conjure. I aligned them to get a sense of what are my key witnesses, look at do we have a schematic tree, blah, 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 the whole thing, right? So theological methods, hardcore. And so alignment was a problem. We used Collatex. It's a Python script at the time, but this is what you can do now. So here I have, I've tested only 6 or 7 witnesses. So Bible, this go Pujak. And here it's the beginning. So I gave the text, the samples, and I asked for, my prompt is, you are a philologist specialized in Tibetan Buddhist studies. You will produce a critical edition of the following witnesses. Witnesses with the Tibetan text in Wiley this time. So I helped create blah, 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 and it's starting, And so what Claude does too is that they have what they call artifacts. So they have, a document that opens up in the right window, which they can update message after message. And that's what you get. So you get the passage of the sutra, the string, and then you have the apparatus criticus, but really, it gives you, it gives you the group, like the variant ratings shared by the different witnesses, and then it will make comments. Look at that. It's telling you what are the schematic families, basically. It's saying we have 3 groups, 3 groups. So calculated based on the variant ratings, right, and the way they relate to one another and how much they make sense, right? So it's telling you, okay, we have 3 groups, and the name of the groups are irrelevant. It doesn't make any sense. Primary transmission, Ratnakuta, it's all Ratnakuta, it's a Ratnakuta text, so that doesn't matter. And you see, this is why, as Kurt was mentioning, it's a back and forth too. It's not just that, but it can help us tremendously improve our work and save a lot of time, because what's happening is that essentially, okay, I don't want these names, they don't make any sense, right? The groups, so actually what we have is regional families, like, Tampama, Tselpa, then you would have Dolpo, Muslim group, we have Western Tibetan group. So we have different, genetically, so to speak, related witnesses, but there's a lot of contamination. And so you can't have a proper, schematic tree in that case. But what you have is definitely groups, and these groups are correct. This is Derge, and Didi is, I forgot the name, but that's a Bhutanese copy of their. So, yeah, and
So that's
Dokpo,
again the stemmer, right?
so it's, yeah, that has a stemma. For the Tselpa, we have a stemma. For the Tempoma, we have a stemma up to a point. For the Bhutanese conjurer, we all know if they're Tselpa or Tempoma, but we don't know that we can't have a stemma for everything. We can have families and a stemma within a family, but we can't really sort out the contamination issue.
You mean ever or just
Ever, I think. Ever, because it was cross-contamination, and the only methodology we can use, which I follow personally for this kind of work, is Maurice Bevenot, Oxford scholar. I will work on Sanskrit, treatise that was available like 80 or 90 copies, and with extreme contamination. And he came up with a methodology, but we can sidetrack now. We can talk later about that. But what is amazing is that it's giving you a fair idea, and in 30 seconds again, of this like thematic relationships. And yeah. How much more time, Marcus, do you have?
It's 12:12. We're ending at 12:30 was the plan.
Okay.
It's coming to lunch, but
I guess
yeah.
I have a question of things, so maybe we could.
You have some questions?
Yeah, if there's an interest, we can always,
Yeah.
have a workshop, something later. Yeah.
So here we have examples of very concrete things, right? You fed in text and you asked it to about it. Now, if you have something more abstract,
Yes.
for example, like give me all the translations of commentaries that exist to this date on commentaries for the Bodhichariya.
So the thing we have to do that, this is other steps later. So I was about to show perplexity and notebook LM and other things, but you have two aspects to this game, as far as I can tell so far. Is the one is your information, your personal documentation. So it can be a stash of PDFs you have. It can be a online database with a lot of like structured information. So you would have first to index probably this information. So meaning having a information retrieval system that can tell you what it is, you have where, and then you can query in natural language mode, through an LLM. Yeah, you can query and then have this like more elaborate like conversations in a way, right? Queries, and keep on like digging. But there are things, to be fair, for which, and that I should say maybe if we don't have too much time, is that the information you feed there and it has access to is very important, because it's not good at creating its own metadata, meaning if you ask the number of occurrences of a term in a file, you won't necessarily always have a very correct, very accurate answer. In this case, it's probably better to have a corpus linguistic tool the old way. They will, give you, for example, this kind of stuff. So that's what it does, right? But what you can do then is on this data that is processed, you can start, querying.
So basically you're telling me if I give it information, then it can handle it relatively good. However, if I ask it to give me some answers on things I have no idea about and I can't feed it.
I wouldn't trust it personally, because the problem is that in my experience, I tried, and same thing if you use the training data of the model. So you don't upload anything and you ask general questions. Sometimes it'd be okay. I mean, we were talking about the Rita rate or the Tsemarita the other day.
Yes.
And so if it's been used by the model for training, it can answer in certain a way questions about it. But I have a feeling that it's better to upload the information you want to query, or to, define the scope of the information you're interested in first, and then query on that, the tool. In that case, I script very often, as a prompt by asking, do not consider any other source of information,
Mhm.
but the one I uploaded in the project knowledge or in the space.
Yeah, that's an important point for
Yeah.
our work, for instance, when you're doing those summaries.
Yeah.
If you want to write a summary of Tibetan text, you should upload the Tibetan text.
Yeah.
Ask for a summary from that, not
Okay.
from the general knowledge.
Okay,
It will
yes.
hallucinate
Okay.
otherwise, right?
So maybe if we
Yeah.
are to conclude soon.
We got a question from Celso.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hey,
we can
guys.
hear you.
Yeah, I can
Great,
see.
yeah, wonderful. I was just wondering, quick, in that first example from Claude, you were uploading a lot of texts, which would imagine would be a really, really large token limit. Were those texts being like vectorized into a specific vector database and then retrieved with a prompt in that case? Or and in general, have you experimented with that? I've kind of been interested in getting catered data, using kind of, vectorizing data and then asking, very specific analytical questions about a corpus using like I think it's called RAG, right? The retrieval augmented generation. And have you experimented with that in Claude or any of these studios and getting any results?
That's where we would like to go. But at this stage, the proof of concept was we have information. So we have to have information retrieval, indexing first, then retrieval. But we were talking with Sebastian the other day about that. And in my experience, we don't need a semantic mapping necessarily for that, through our embeddings or, vectorization, or we need keywords. Keywords are probably good for a large part of the job we want to do. If we go with if we're working not too much across languages, and if we use, queries for something that can be easily definable through basic keywords, which is in working with translators, I would say it's probably 99% of, the queries I would get is something where, you have a database full of information. You need to retrieve the right documents, for example, the scholarship on a given topic. Keywords are going to give you that most of the time, provided that the PDFs, if we're talking PDFs, have been properly RCR. So,
Right.
Or if it's a tree of it's an information chain, right? But I don't know if we need hyper complex, we could always look at better ways to index, say, a large corpus, or to index files, massive amounts of files. But at the end of the day, if you look at all the scholarship about, say, Atisha, right, chances are that, the keyword's going to land you there.
Sebastian, you want to chime in on this too? Anything to add? Yeah.
I largely agree with what Greg said, and also I talked with Kiyonori Nagasaki in Berkeley a couple of weeks ago about this, because he's building a WAG retrieval system for scholarly literature in Japanese, and we come to the same conclusion that keyword-based retrieval is extremely important, because a lot of scholarly questions are, as Greg described, we are more worrying about individual terms and concepts than really having long semantic queries that require a semantic answer. So it's less likely that we are asking those questions. It does happen, of course, and I think there's a special case when we are talking about textual reuse and the detection of similar passages, like a verse that is cited somewhere else, but the order of the words is a bit changed, or a bit the vocabulary has changed, and so on. And in that cases, the semantic embeddings become more important. But in general, I think a good keyword-based retrieval system is very important to get to a usable state. And I think for vector embeddings, we also have a lot of research to do ahead of us. We are just getting to terms with machine translation, and to really get good semantic embeddings for a language like Tibetan is not trivial at all. And in that sense, I think, it is something which we really have to research properly by doing evaluation, by finding use cases where we actually need it. And I think there's a great chance for collaboration between Sadra and Metra as well, when it comes to giving feedback and giving ideas of what kind of search queries and questions you might want to get answered by such a system. Yeah.
Thank you. Interesting. And Yeah, any other questions before we move on to another, you want to do one
I just want to.
on the same topic?
No.
Or you want to start next?
I just want to say something for the translators
Oh, yeah.
who want to use these tools.
Yeah.
That there are other things I had, and I'm sorry we don't have enough time, but maybe we can.
Well, we might, I mean,
We can run over.
you could do another tool for sure.
Okay,
Just you want to do that first and then another question, or
up to you guys. I mean,
is there anybody else live that wants to raise a hand? And I think you have to raise your hand on that using, okay, nobody. That's okay. Why don't you go for it?
okay, thanks, Marcus. So I just wanted to say a few words really about the tools that are good to identify scholarship, to absorb scholarship. You know, the beginning of a project, that's another thing too, or we're talking about some of our translators, working on a general Tantra a volume, and then they hit a section in Gat Chakra or something, or they're gonna have to translate a passage that is very technical, and they're not necessarily fully trained, but they need to acquire knowledge quickly. So there are tools when you start from there that can be useful. So here I prepared a little thing here, but I uploaded. This is perplexity.ai. That's very good to do that. Basically, I think it's an amazing tool to bring you up to try to stare the knowledge when you're dealing with a new project. If you're not familiar with something, if you're already very familiar with the entire environment, it's not going to help you much, I think, too much. If you're a specialist of Dzogchen and you go there, for example, it's But if it's something really new, it can be useful. And we're talking, right, about all these steps that we're not even aware of when we translate. I mean, we're going to pick up a book and start reading about a topic, so this is what it does. And here I uploaded. So in this tool, again, you can upload files here. So you have files here, you can go with that. And so I uploaded Sarah Harding's work on Chö that she did for Dhamra. And so I'm I don't know anything about Chö. So give me an overview of the Tibetan practice of Chö as explained in the space file. So again, I'm limiting my search to the resources in the space. I don't want to have something from the web. So there are options with the pro version. You can select the academic type of answer. You have a web answer. You have various possibilities there. Go with academic if it's usually more solid. And then what you get is you're going to get an overview of Chö. So it starts with this, and you can carry on the conversation. And look, the other thing that's quite amazing. Notebook LM does that too. By the way, is that there are some questions already that have been prepared by the tool. And it's a really cool thing because what happens here is that you can just hit that and see what's coming, and it goes on, and you are in control. You're in control of the way the information is brought to you, right? So that's a very nice tool to explore a new environment and to find sources too. So you can find here the sources that are in the space, and I'm happy because it's not dealing with extra sources. But if I had tick a box saying our web answer, then it would bring back resources from the web, which can be useful too if you want, say, to know more articles or have more input from different sources than the one you're using. So this is perplexity. It's a very powerful tool. So you see it went with the full answer. So here the question was, how does Chö differ from other Tibetan Buddhist practices? And so, based on the sources, it's telling you more about that. So maybe just Notebook LM for those who are not familiar with that. So likewise can prepare notes for you, where it's going to these notes generate a few automatically. A few resources, or you can query to the files you upload. The same system for those of us who are new to this, a prompt window here where you can ask your question basically. Then something you uploaded here, some resources, book PDF, then you start you're in flow. You can start asking questions. And here's I had something here too. Sorry, not this one. So here, summary was prepared. So what the thing's about, but you see, you have questions too. And that's quite nice if you want to, for example, how does MIPAM integrate the two truths of conventional ultimate reality into a soteriological framework for practice? So that was what I worked on. And here you get an answer. And it's quite solid with sources too. So it's telling you which page you have. I mean, you can find information on. So it's kind of and the cool thing too, if you don't have time and you want to, drive to work or somewhere, but still work on the way to the supermarket, then you have a podcast. I don't know if it's going to be still a problem. I'll mute it.
Oh,
that's right. But anyways, what you can do for those of us online, who are with us online today is you can upload a PDF or whatever you want, and then you ask for a podcast to be produced on the basis of this information, and you'll be amazed how much it flows. When it can be a nice tool to if you don't have time to read a book, to get to know what's going on there. So, anyways, a lot of stuff still, but maybe I don't know. We can.
So sorry, you are uploading a book to it, and then you're telling it to create a podcast on it.
I try to.
So
that's fine.
I noticed that in Notebook you can also, as one of your sources, you can also just add a URL to a website.
Exactly.
So I did that with the Buddha Nature website and asked it to generate a 4-minute discussion on it. And it generated a 4-minute little podcast conversation about the whole website describing what it was about.
Was it good?
It was strikingly good in the sense that it reminded me of the discussions we had together when we planned it.
Yeah.
And the whole discover, explore, study, and it's explained it exactly how we had planned to do it. That's how it interpreted the website.
And that was Notebook LM, or
that was Notebook LM.
All right, another thing real quick. I uploaded a Japanese article on the Bodhisattva, related for our project. It's in Japanese, so I can't read Japanese. So step 1, produce a 500-word summary. Step 2, I am particularly interested in transmission of the Bodhisattva from India to Tibet. Step 3, use several sections here. So that's what you get. You get the paper by Fujita examines 4 major Buddhist monastic institutions, Mahaviharas, established under the Pala dynasty, blah, blah, blah. And it tells you what the article is about. And it comes to step 2, Bodhisattva transmission. And here you have the information you need, right? So you can refer to the paper, understand what's in there. Check visually the paper always if you do that. I would recommend, usually in Japanese scholarship, the Sanskrit word will be in Sanskrit. So if Vibhuti Chandra is quoted, you can have a look in the paper to see if there is a Vibhuti Chandra there. So it's good to cover your bases when you use the tools first, but it's giving an overview. And the final word for those of us who work with Abhidharma or doctrinal text, so ChatGPT Preview is exceptional at having conversations on the semantic extension, of concepts in Sanskrit and the related extension of your terminology when you go for something. For example, if you're working in Vastu Dharma, I'm taking something really, plain, right? So if you want to check whether all Vastus are Dharmas, or if they are Vastus, they are not necessarily a Dharma. If you want to see then if a phenomenon is good, because if all Dharmas are phenomenon, then you have a Samskrita Dharmas, there will be noumenon, there will still be newer definition of phenomenon, but we all use phenomenon. Meaning you have logical relationships that are not necessarily preserved by the English translation of that doesn't reflect the logical semantic structure of the original language from which we translate. And that's an issue we have to be very aware of. And so with this ChatGPT preview, that is really good at thinking in a way. What they would call chain of thoughts. you can start having conversations about like, okay, I mean, going for this term, and does it actually reflect? And then yes, but no, and you have a whole conversation with someone who can follow your train of thought, who can question it, and say, well, actually, what you're doing is quite good, but it's not completely accurate, you know. And so it makes you think as well, because you know sometimes right? There's no provision between what you're doing and what is in the text, not 100%, and that can be extremely dangerous. You know, and so having a notion of that, of the logical consequences in philosophical text, of the terminology you go for, and what is going to be down the line, like in a chess game, right? Like 10 moves later, you know, your definition used could be problematic, while in the original text it's not. And so that's kind of little things, but ChatGPT preview is really good at that. Yeah,
Wow.
the preview model is really good. Yeah. And you can specify the standpoint as well, like the traditions, so from the Tantrika perspective, from the and start having an actual conversation. And as Kurt and Sebastian were saying, even if it's not necessarily always completely correct, you know, it will improve the way we work, because I believe, because it will lead you to ask yourself the right questions, right? As a translator, like, you know, is that actually, wait, you know? And then you have someone in a way, I suppose, maybe not, but you have some kind of like, and we may be sometimes we're a little bit lonely in our translator, you know, work. You don't have necessarily always someone there, and so that's an amazing tool to have a conversational system.
Yeah.
All right.
Amazing. Wow. Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Kurt or Sebastian, would you like to?
Yeah, I did want to. That was great, Gregory. I mean, I didn't honestly, maybe arrogantly, didn't think I would learn much about AI today, but you definitely showed me some use cases that I wasn't aware of. And one thing I would say is that from where I'm sitting, Perplexity is the supplier that's most focused on factuality and actuality, because ChatGPT and Claude are both allowing you to turn a parking ticket into a Shakespeare sonnet and so forth. They're a lot more allowing for creativity, which also leads to much more confabulation and hallucination and so forth.
Yeah, that's true. That's something absolutely. I wanted to show Perplexity more and not book LM2, Kurt, actually. Perplexity is a great tool, definitely. I encourage everyone to try it, particularly to you know more about a topic. It's really way better than anything else. You know, if you have to build up some knowledge, you know, build a documentation, it's better probably than Claude and ChatGPT from that specific perspective. I think it's a very good tool.
Yes, and I just shared to the hosts and panelists. I think this discount, you know, free 1 year free thing still works. So if Marcus, if you want to circulate with that people, that's certainly fine.
Yeah, I'm just sending it now in the chat to everyone on the webinar. So it should go out to the whole group now, I think. Yeah. Great.
So I had other things about just to you know, as a teaser, maybe if we want to go for a workshop, if there is an interest to do that, but we have things about as well, entity recognition, like going through text and saying, okay, you know, what are the persons, places, technical terms across all the text and corpus. That's something as well we may, for example, I was interested in spotting a dialogue between Manjushri and actually MIT. I mean, there are corpus linguistic tools to do that too, but it's really nice to have, you know, to have the possibility to do this on the fly. So
right.
Other things too, semantic, you know, semantic patterns. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And we're just like, I'm showing this slide now, which is the pre-translation phase, you know, of the work, where you will have a lot of questions, right? We have questions about this, that, what is the lineage, you know, what is a relationship between technical terms like given topic and the author or a lineage, you know? And so there are a lot of like semantic issues of that involved patterns, like relationships, you know, and that we can explore in a very easy way too with these tools. Sometimes we do have to produce some metadata about that, So,
Hmm.
I was experimenting yesterday with word trees. So it gives you collocations. So what terms come after and before another term. And then word embedding, so semantic mapping, closest neighbors of Dishinimpo across the Longshenpa, text on the topic. And I could show you, because conversations here about, okay, tell me what this text is about on the basis of the collocations, and then tell me what the text is on the basis of the semantic mapping that we do through these, algorithms, and then combine the two and tell me what the text is about. And you have very interesting things, and you can go into a full kind of, again, conversation in a natural way. So this phase of the work where you're trying to understand your corpus better, where you're trying to dig, really dig in terms of things you're particularly interested in, it's going to be amazing to have these tools. It's very exciting, as Eric was saying. It's an exciting moment, that we're all going through right now, I think, with these tools. So yeah, lot to do.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, maybe we could continue at some other point. We could host some other discussions online, and we can look at more examples, and other people could share what they're doing with it. Because I think this is all technology that's very much in process, right? We're all learning to use it right now. Next year.
Sebastian, could you explain the transition from Buddha Nexus to Dharma Nexus?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. So, yeah, I mean, Buddha Nexus was always developed as an open source platform, so the code base was always available publicly, and in that sense, yeah, Dharma Nexus is going to be, because we have done a lot of data collection at the Metra project, especially for Sanskrit, because there is just, as all of you probably know, there's no good unified database for Sanskrit literature at the moment, and that's one of the big issues that we want to address, and we're expanding a lot on what Buddha Nexus originally provided in regards to Sanskrit. And when it comes to Tibetan, we are really happy to take on whatever data sets you might be interested in. And also, like at Hamburg, we still had like technical limitations on how much data we could provide, but now at UC Berkeley, of course, the resources are different, so we can also make more data available and link through bigger corpora than we could do so far. So that's what Dharma Nexus, in contrast to Buddha Nexus, is going to provide.
What kind of data do you need for Dharma Nexus?
Unicode text is the best. So that's basically just text files is what we are working in. Yeah.
Tibetan. In Tibetan, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Tibetan, Sanskrit, Chinese, Pali, that's the languages we cover, yeah.
And for the Metra search, so the Metra search will use the Dharma Nexus data?
Yes, so both systems use the same data, and the format is also identical, yeah.
Great. Wonderful.
Another question on Metra search. So if I inject a lot of Tibetan text into Dharma Nexus, I can question in Tibetan the content of this Tibetan text, correct?
Can
I question in English or not? Can I question in English or not?
Sorry, I didn't acoustically get it.
You can do, yes, you can do an English prompt.
Okay. Yeah, you can prompt in any language, also in Sanskrit or Pali. That should also work. Yeah.
But can you also inject English translation or French translation into the Nexus or the Metra search? Like, where is the data? Is it a difference between the Metra search and the Dharma Nexus, or is it the same data or the same model questioned different ways?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference between Metra search and the Dharma Nexus is that Dharma Nexus is like a static graph representation where we pre-calculate all of these connections, which is computationally very intensive. So we go, basically it's doing a many-to-many comparison of all of the individual pieces of text that we have in the database. And then when you work with it, as those of you who work with Buddha Nexus already have seen, you can then click your way through those connections. You can see where they lead to and so on. And that kind of experience is different from Metra search, which is like a live search. You type something in and then the results are generated on the spot. Yeah, adding translations into this is a very good idea. And we haven't done it so far at Buddha Nexus, but for Dharma Nexus, we will certainly do that we will also include the translation corpus in that search system so that you can also see the connections with the translations and also within the translations and so on. I think that would be a great added value at this point, yeah.
So, like for example, if you provide to you the full tree of knowledge translation in English or the full Dhamra translation in English, then we will be able to question the whole content of this information, like the notes and everything else, right?
Yeah. That should be possible, yes.
Mhm. Great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All good.
Highlight of you.
So we have a lot of data to share.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
And everybody's listening, the more data you contact Marcus, but if you also have, data that are sitting on your hard drive and you think that are valuable for this project, you should, and you're willing to share them, that'd be fantastic. So
yeah, wonderful. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Sebastian, Kurt, and Greg. And we'll continue the conversation online as we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. All right, have a wonderful day. We're off to lunch.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.